Welcome back to Next Level Contractor, the channel that helps aspiring and new contractors go from 0 to 5 million plus in revenue without becoming just another failed statistic. I'm your host, Michael Bourgeois, and every episode we break down the real journey of building a successful contracting business, tracking the obstacles, strategies, and insider tips that will get you to the top faster and smarter. If you're ready to level up your business, let's get into it. Today we have with us a return guest. He's awesome. His name is Plumber Tom, but he was born with the name Thomas Hicken, and he's actually a professor that teaches at, in the plumbing vocational department of the it's University of Utah, right?
It's Utah
Or is it
State
Utah
University.
State?
Yeah.
Dang,
They're
how could I?
I know, why did they name those so close together?
Why do they do that? They do it with every state,
I
right?
know.
So he teaches at Utah State University. He teaches a plumbing program, which is actually pretty cool for a university, a state university. He's also he's got a successful YouTube channel where he teaches about plumbing.
Right.
Your channel is Plumber Tom, right?
It is, yep, pretty simple. Plumber Tom.
Plumber hyphen Tom,
Uh-huh.
just like your name. That's pretty cool that you changed your name to that too.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I haven't, like, legally done that, but
if only, if
maybe
only.
someday.
Yeah. Just put it on your ID. "Sir, what's your name?" "Plumber Tom." You just
What?
show 'em, yeah, always showing your driver's license. I know, but he runs his own successful contracting company. He's bought a plumbing business, uh, brought it to profit, sold a plumbing business, started another plumbing business. This guy is a busy, busy guy, and he knows his stuff. He's really the authority, in my opinion, on being a plumbing contractor and how to do well as a plumbing contractor. So thank you very much for joining us, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and for coming back. Last time we met, you had a visual aid for us, which was really cool, and you got another one today.
Ooh, yeah.
You want me to pull that up now, or you want to
Yeah,
wait a bit?
I'll do a little intro, and then we'll jump into that.
Okay.
The topic for today that we're gonna discuss is one that anyone who wants to grow a business, you have to have a good handle on this, and that is having employees. And there's a lot to be said for that. As far as good advice, I was watching some of these other videos from Next Level Contractor, and Noah was one of the guests. And I really liked his advice about the timing of hiring employees and his advice to wait as long as you can until, and I think he basically said until you're bursting and you just can't survive because you have so much work. And I felt like, yeah, he had some really good advice on employees that way
He did. Yeah,
because,
Noah's got Noah Davis, right? That's who you're talking about. He's got a
yeah, exactly.
ton of great information.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like anyone who starts a business and has the idea to grow a business will need to have employees. If you want to keep your business super simple, one man show, it'll be simple. And I'll say that if you get employees in the mix, it does become more complex. But if you stay a one man show and never grow, then you're limiting yourself on your income. You can do well and you can do so much, but that's as far as you'll ever get, and you'll never be able to scale or grow. So if you're going to scale and grow, if that's your goal, you have to understand how to handle employees. And that's a really hard one, I think, for a lot of people. It can be some of, I think, the most rewarding of all of your experiences in running a business is those interactions with your team. But it can also be some of the worst days of your life when you're having to deal with the problems that come. And so it's important to understand and be prepared so that, you can succeed when it comes to having employees.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no problem-free business, right? If you're doing
Yeah,
all the work yourself, you're dealing with problems all the time, and then when you
exactly.
when you add other people to the mix, it's just different, right? Still problems, just not the same problems,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah,
And
it's a whole
and
different animal.
Your job description will change too. It's likely that if you're starting a business, you've already been in some kind of a leadership role, even in your past work, where you were you were maybe a foreman or you're in charge and you have people under you. So if you have that kind of experience, that's helpful. But yeah, it's like having those people with you, they can really empower you, and I think that's the best way to look at it. So uh, ag- as we start into the discussion of employees, I think it's important to consider your own perspective as you look at an employee within the business, because you can look at them either as an asset or a liability. And just maybe to clarify, assets are things that bring money to you, that are a benefit to you. A liability is something that's going to be an expense. It's going to take money away from you. And when you're doing payroll, over and over, and especially when you're paying payroll and payroll taxes and workman's compensation and insurance, it can start to look like your employee is a liability. And then if you start to think like this employee is more of an expense thing to me, you're going to treat them differently than if you think of them as assets, as someone that is a benefit to my business and can, grow my business and help my business and bring prosperity. But I think there may be somewhat of a fallacy in assuming that just because I have employees, automatically I'm going to make more money. It's not as simple as that. There's a lot more pieces in play. So, in previous discussions, I've talked about the importance of being into the details of your business and knowing your numbers. And I think, especially with employees, you need to be in the details so that you're covered, because they are going to cost something, but you have to be prepared for that and make sure that you're still profitable with them on board. And then you're not going to be looking as much at like, are my liability because they're always costing me things. Like I had an employee who he did great work. He was very knowledgeable in the trade, but he consistently leaked and flooded homes, and then he went and wrecked one of my brand new vans, and it was getting hard for me to think of him as like
Oh, no.
you know an asset, because there were repeated uh expenses attached to his performance. But maybe I'll pause here too and say, like, you mentioned I'm a plumber, I'm Plumber Tom, but what we're talking about here is applicable to any and all
That's right, it's
people,
universal.
yeah, who have employees at all.
That's right.
And so these are some important principles to understand. One other maybe little plug is, if you're watching this, make sure to watch to the end of the video, because we're going to discuss a few things about maintaining peace of mind for your employees. But at the end, there's some really important discussion that you'll want to be a part of. So stay tuned, and we'll get to that. But maybe now, yeah, if you don't mind, Michael, let's have a look at this little illustration that I have. Employee peace of mind. This is going along with kind of a three-phase view of a business. In the last video, I presented customer peace of mind and what I believe are the pillars that enable you to please a customer so that they will love you and always come back, and they will tell other people about you. We talked about how important it is to give excellent service and excellent work, and when you earn their trust, then you earn those referrals. And that's a lot harder than earning their criticism and complaints, right? So you've worked so hard to get these customers, to please them. And then automatically over time, your business starts to grow, and you'll hit that point where it's like, I've got so much work. I really need some help. And that again, the timing of that's important to consider, and to make sure you have enough work so that you're not losing. But once you get to that point, you've worked so hard and now you've hired employees. One of the biggest risks and losses to a business is you bring someone in, you train them up, you get them to do exactly what you need, and then they leave for some other job. And so, like, employee retention is so important to the success of your business, especially when you have a really good one. And the really good ones are the ones that other companies are going to want to try and pick off, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. To that, so this is a quote. I didn't make it up. I'm not smart enough to come up with something like this. Maybe you're familiar with a guy named John Maxwell. He's a public speaker, but he said the only thing worse than training a good employee properly and having them leave is training an employee badly and having them stay. So, you can't
Yeah,
be
like that.
scared of training somebody up and investing into them and turning them into a superstar within your company. You can't be afraid to do that just because you think they might leave. Because the flip side of that is that you don't train them to be a superstar and then they stay with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I think is a whole other topic on like how to properly train employees. As I ran my business, I found that to be probably one of the biggest challenges that every single contractor faces is how do you get someone up to speed and up to capacity like as fast as possible?
Like yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time developing training systems within my business to try and expedite that. But still, I mean, it takes time and yeah, like, if you especially if you don't train them right, man, and here's how that
Oh, yeah.
happens. You're so busy, right? It's like, "Ah, I got so much going on. Oh, finally, I have this employee. I'm just gonna have him on that
Throw them
job
out
today, and
there.
I'll be on this other job today, and I'll
Yeah.
just lay him out and let him go." But it's and that's how a lot of us, unfortunately, were trained, where it was like, we're just throwing you in the fire, right? You don't really
Yep.
know what you're doing, but then it's just like, "Well, figure it out." That's not gonna produce the kind of employee that you want or need, um,
Absolutely. Yeah, oh,
and
that's huge,
and
that's huge. You
that
just throw them
causes
out there. "Why don't you
yeah,
know what I know? Why don't you have the same level of quality in your mind that I have? Like, why don't you do as
yeah,
good a job as I would do?"
and it is easy to make assumptions. I found myself with that, even though I'm consciously trying to do well with my employees, I all too often assume they know more than just because it's so commonplace in my mind, It's like,
Yeah.
I know this for decades, why don't you?"
Yep.
But that was one of the real hurtful things. I remember I had an employee that he said that to me. He was like, "You should know this by now." And as an employee, I was like, I did I say that right? It was my employer. He said
Got it. Okay,
that to
good.
me, and then I felt like, "Well, how? Like, 'cause you've never taught me and no one's ever taught me that. How am I supposed to know that by now?" And his
Right.
assumption that I should know this by now was like it didn't help me, it didn't help him, but it was hurtful. So there's a lot that could be said on training. But when it comes to that, like let's say you've got someone you're training and you're making progress, you want them to have peace of mind within your business. And that's what this is all about. Now, I might be oversimplifying, there might be other aspects to this, but I really tried to look at similar to my customers, what does my employee want? And some of the best advice I ever heard, I think I heard this through one exam prep, some of the other videos I'd seen in the past, but some really good advice that if you treat your employees like your customers, you're going to do better. Meaning, like, you wouldn't scold your customers, right? You wouldn't, like, I don't know, treat them unkindly or with disrespect if you care at all about the future of your business. And the same thing with your employees. There's got to be that level of if you treat them right, if you create peace of mind within your employees, your chances of retaining them are better. Your chances of succeeding together as a team are better. And again, I feel like there's these three basic pillars that hold that up. So we'll talk through these real quick. And you're welcome to give your opinion here, Michael, as we go. But the first one I see there, and it's pretty obvious, and maybe the one that everyone focuses on is compensation. Like you got to pay them, so that's their wages. But in our world, that's more than just giving them money. Like they're gonna want maybe some health insurance, retirement, paid time off, and clearly, the better package that you can present, the better employee you're going to attract and retain. And that's not something that you can just do. Here's one of the mistakes I think that contractors make is they're like, I don't have enough money in my business to be able to pay you well. I don't have enough money in my business to give you insurance or to provide a retirement. Well, if you don't have enough money in your business for that, then maybe you're not doing your math right, because that should be built in if you want a successful business, right? If you're going to
Right.
attract the right employees,
Sounds like you're underbidding everything if that's the
yeah,
case.
yeah, and if you're not making the kind of profits that can pay an employee well, then of course you're not going to attract good employees. So, I mean, that's number one. I think we hyper focus on that one is like getting the best and creating a compensation package that makes them want to be there. But I
That
think,
doesn't mean overpay, of course.
yeah, no,
I
and
know
and
there's
there,
a temptation there to, like, just, "I'm gonna pay everybody more than what everybody else is paying so I get the best people." But then you're stuck with a bunch of overly paid employees.
yeah,
So what does that do to your prices and your profit margins?
yeah, yeah, and that is something you constantly have to watch. Is like, am I still making profits given the employee, payroll and all that's involved? Now, and it's interesting you bring that up because some contractors might make this mistake. Early on in my career, I decided I wanted to move from the Salt Lake area up north to where my wife is from, and it's a little more rural, but this was back in 2005, and things were just rolling great with the economy. There was work everywhere. And so I was going to go, I was still an apprentice. I went to get a job and I interviewed with 5 different plumbing companies at that time. I mean, at the time it was nice because it was to my advantage. I could pick and choose my employer instead of the other way around where, employers are picking and choosing their employees. So I interviewed with all these people and this one guy, he clearly paid more than anyone. And I sat down with every one of these guys face to face and had an interview. But I just really didn't feel comfortable with the way that he treated me. He was very overbearing, controlling, um, dominating. He just had this presence that I didn't feel comfortable with. And but he had the best package. I mean, the best of everything in pay. And I remember he called me because I was still like interviewing and making decisions. He called me shortly after the interview, maybe a day or two later, and he's like, "So, are you gonna take the job from me?" And I was like, "Well, I'm still interviewing with a few and trying to make this a decision." And then he got angry on the phone. He got angry with me and he was like, "Well, I pay better than anyone else around here. You're not gonna find anything better than this. So why would you be so stupid as to go work for someone else?" And he's like chewing me out on the phone. I'm not even hired by this guy
Oh,
yet.
man. I wonder if the other trades or the other, industries outside of skilled trades have, like, people like this that are
Yeah.
bosses, you know?
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt it at all. I think this is
Maybe so, yeah, but
people are like
yeah,
this.
I've had some like that.
Yeah, and he had no comprehension of the fact that, like, I care more about the way you treat me than how much you pay me, and I
Yeah,
went and worked for
at
another
least a
guy.
little. Yeah, at least a little
Yeah,
bit.
I worked for this other guy instead, and I had a really good experience, and he trained me well, and he treated me with respect, and so we look at compensation, and some people mistakenly think that if I just pay them well, then everything's fine. It doesn't matter how I treat them. And obviously, there's more to it than that. So, another pillar I think in this is um, creating job security. I think treating them with respect is a part of that, and creating a good company culture where people feel included, they feel a part, they don't feel like they're being discriminated or treated with less respect than they'd want to be. But job security there also has to do with understanding that this company is solid, that we're not at risk of going under or failing. And I made this mistake in running my business over the years where I had periods where I did struggle where I was trying to grow the business and it was that question of like, let's see, I had 2 vans, 2 employees, and a little more work than we could handle. So I assumed I think we're good. I'm gonna jump and try again. And then in my mind, I was like, just use marketing, get the word out, the work will come. But I hired the next level. And as I had another guy in another van, my expenses were up. And it was just, I was scraping bottom because the work kind of slowed down unexpectedly. And I was just really hurting, right? Well, my mistake in that whole situation was in sharing too much with my employees. I didn't show them my books as much as I just expressed that things were tight and that I was uncomfortable. And I mean, I was just trying to be open and friendly and let them know where I was at. But what that did within my employees was create this insecurity where
Mm.
they were like, well, am I safe here? Am I going to have a job next month? Would I be better off going somewhere else? I compare it to if you were out in the ocean on a ship and the ship is your business and you're cruising along, but you find a leak in the bottom, and you're taking on water. If you're sinking fast, it's going to go down and everyone's going to know and it's going to be over.
Yeah,
But if you, and this is so common, I think we do spring leaks in the boat of our business.
sure.
If you have a little leak in the bottom, but it's something that you have a plan for and you're going to patch, uh, don't tell the crew that you're taking on water. You
Get
know
on the
what I
radio,
mean?
"Attention crew." Yeah.
And and it's like,
There's
yeah,
always a possibility we could sink from this, but I
yeah,
think we're
and
gonna repair it.
if
Yeah.
it's gonna sink, you might be fair to him and be like, "Yeah, no, it's about over. You ought to look around."
Yeah. Do
But
you
that's
have a
not
life
that's not
vest?
that's
Yeah.
not the intention of it of any of us starting a business. That's not why we have these conversations at Next Level Contractor, because you're not gonna sink your ship. You're gonna make decisions that are gonna change course, correct course, and patch the holes. You're gonna make it. And to express to your employees any sort of insecurity about what's happening within your business could possibly drive them away. And I saw that with some of mine where I was like in that state and then they ended up leaving. So, job security, I think there's several things involved there, but creating a good environment and making sure that they know that there's a good future for them there. So, that's the second pillar. And then the third pillar is opportunity. And that has to do with growth because everyone in their work is going to do better if they know that there's more for them later. So if I get hired and I'm doing maybe let's use a factory job, for example. If my job is on a conveyor belt and all I'm going to do is just push a button or pull a lever, and that's all I'm ever going to do for the rest of my life, and there's never opportunity for me to get into anything else, am I going to be happy in that work? What if they compensate me really well to push that button? And what if there's a really great company culture and we have good lunch breaks together? But I'm going to be sitting and pushing that button for the rest of my life, and that's it. There's a real possibility that I'm going to be discontent because I want to know that when I'm contributing, that I'm growing and that there's opportunity in the future. And so this is all about, we talked about the training program, having a training program that can bring someone from point A to point B, having opportunity within the business to get them to a higher level, leadership level, maybe even management level. Um, but in building into the business these steps that allow people to move up and to move forward. That's a really important part to keeping employee peace of mind. If they know that you're interested not only in who they are now and what they can do now, but in building them to become something that's better, that's going to really help them to feel valued within the business. And so, creating that environment of opportunity. If you look at like how do you do that? I sat down with my employees every month. I had an interview with my employees and like a one to one, and I would talk about how are things going. This gave me a good opportunity to evaluate their work on an individual level and just say, we had this issue and we worked through that. And now that we do things this way so that we don't run into those problems. It was an opportunity to make those corrections,
Mhm.
but also every 6 months in those interviews, I would look at, okay, well, it's time for a raise, and or if 6 months from now you're going to want a raise, here are the things that I would expect for you, like the skills that you'll need, or the job performance that I would want to see, and just building into the business that look to the future and that opportunity. And when you can do all of those things together, you've got a good compensation package, you're creating job security so they know that there's a good future for them here and an opportunity for them where it's like I can grow. That I think is the best way of making sure that they have peace of mind and then they're going to want to be there. And the interesting thing as we look at these is employees may be willing to give up one or the other, but especially as we consider compensation. Going back to the guy that was offering me the most money, you know what? I'd take a good work environment and job security and opportunity over money, and I did. I had a better experience. And especially in your business, if you've got poachers coming over that are trying to take your guys, and I've seen this like right here in our state. Um, there were some job poachers that were going to gas stations and approaching plumbers. These are plumber journeymen and apprentices. Yeah, I mean, obviously they're in a labeled vehicle. These guys, these recruiters would come right up to them at the gas station and be offering them jobs on the
Wow.
spot. There's
Man,
like, I mean, these are this that's the
that's
high level
aggressive.
poaching.
Yeah.
And how are you gonna keep your employees when that's happening? So there was a company here in my area that he has probably 10 guys or more, and the poachers were out, and they came and they had those conversations at the gas station, and about, I don't know, 3 or 4 of his guys left him over that. And, I mean, I know enough about that business to kinda know, like, he wasn't compensating them as well as a lot of the other plumbers, so they were just looking at dollar signs. I think he had a good company culture. I think there was a moderate amount of opportunity, but it was the compensation that was lacking. So, poachers are strong when they're offering big money, and that's why your compensation has to be, good. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like the guys that stayed with him were the ones that felt like, I love it here. I love my boss. I love the way the work that we do. I wouldn't leave this, for a few dollars more because of the experience I'm having. And that's ultimately what you want to create is enough of a company culture and enough employee peace of mind that they're going to want to be there, even if your compensation isn't like perfect. And then I think it's important to always be trying to adjust your compensation, because it has to go up. And we have inflation. You have to be keeping up with those things. So, one other thought on opportunity though is you're going to hit as you're scaling, you're going to hit these points where you can't offer the same opportunity to everyone. And some people are going to be better at growing and turning into a leader than others. But let's say, and this is what I ran into early in my apprenticeship. I was hired on by a company. Two brothers owned the company. All of their sons and their son-in-law were involved with the company.
Oh.
And when it came to opportunity for me, it was like, you know, I could see there
Mm.
was what I thought of as a glass ceiling. It's like they were like, "Yeah, yeah, stick around. You'll be a journeyman, and we'll get you something someday." But I could
Mhm.
also see that within the company, I was never gonna rise up to the top, and
Yeah,
become.
not unless all the others that were related to the owner
Yeah,
rose up above, right?
yeah, and that's a reality that like within your business, you may have your top slots filled with the superstars, and you're just
Mhm.
not gonna be able to provide everyone with those same incredible opportunities. Well, that's okay, you know? Um, you just wanna provide the best opportunities that you can, and that I think that includes having a good training program to help them along with a systematic pay raise. So, here's one of the worst things you can do to destroy employee peace of mind is to hold a carrot out there and never feed it to them? You're just like,
Yeah.
"Someday I'm gonna give you a raise. Keep
I
working
mean, you
hard,
just
guys."
stop chasing it after a while, right? It's
Yeah,
like
because
now
eventually they're like,
carrot gets dangled, they're like, "Nah."
yeah, they give up because you never fed it to them. So, if you're gonna say anything about offering a raise, you have to come through. You have to fulfill your word or you're a liar and they're not gonna have peace of mind for sure. And again, you have to have that organized. If you have an organized, systematic pay scale that's like At this level, you're here. When you're able to do this, then you're here. And for me, I had that. Like I had all the plumbing skills that I wanted to see on a spreadsheet, and I would systematically check them off on skills that I knew that I had trained them on and that they were capable of doing on their own. Then I'd check them off, and when they got to a certain point, well, there's your pay raise. And you get to the next point, and there's a pay raise. And they're incremental, so that you're not like all of a sudden paying them twice as much, but it brings them along. And then I'm fulfilling my word to them and making sure that when I say I'm going to treat you better and give you more, I'm going to come through as long as you're doing your part. So you can see like there's all these dynamics that kind of work in together. But ultimately, if you can provide that peace of mind by, having that focus on all of these employee needs and meeting those needs, then your chances of success are so much higher. So, okay, there's my little spiel on peace of mind. I think we're done with the slide, but I'm curious
That was
on
that was
any
a
of your
good one.
thoughts there, Michael.
My thoughts, well, I tell you what, um, when you're dealing with human beings, right? We're not robots, we're not dogs, and if you're working in the skilled trades, we're not soldiers, right? So, um, it is tough, tough, tough to make a cookie cutter formula, isn't it? When
Yeah,
dealing with people. Um, I mean, even things as now, everything you said, I totally agree with. As usual, most of the things you say, I pretty much agree with. You got a lot of wisdom. It's clear that you know exactly what you're talking about based on personal experience, not something that you heard somebody say somewhere.
yeah. It's the
So
school of hard knocks.
there you go. Yeah, you're not
I've
just
had some hard knocks.
regurgitating something that you heard, or
Yeah,
on some inspirational Facebook video. So
yeah,
yeah, so it is tough. Like I mean, even when you're hiring, like you got to figure out what works best for you regarding opportunity. In fact, uh, Tom, like I'll just ask you, do you prefer to find the most experienced person that you can and hire them, who already knows a whole lot about what they're doing and what to do, but possibly didn't learn it from you, learned it somewhere else, the good and the bad? Or would you rather take somebody who's totally green, and has little to no experience, but they're willing to do the work, right? They're willing to work hard because that's what the trades take, and then you train them almost from knowing nothing. Now, these are 2 extreme cases,
yeah,
right? Like, you got somebody that's on their way to being a master that you hire, and then you got somebody that maybe hasn't even finished, like, the classes necessary to become an apprentice.
yeah.
Which one would you rather?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really important question that a lot of people have. So when hiring someone, I think a lot of people gravitate towards, "I want the experience now," because that's the easy road. If I can
Because
go
that's
and
you can
poach.
send them you can go do something else, right? That's what we
Yeah,
were talking about earlier. That's the person you can
yeah,
just, like, leave to do the work for you.
yeah, and I think it's common among all the trades that when it comes to employees, a lot of people are looking around, and it's easier to hire someone else's guy that has experience, and so they're hanging out there with, like, the compensation package. But to answer your question, I think that what I came to was the most important attribute in hiring an employee for me was, are they teachable? Is this someone who is open-minded and eager? If they don't have motivation and if they're not willing to learn, I don't care like if they have all the experience in the world. I don't want them on my team. I want someone who, and that's the problem. You can hire someone else's guy who has such a hard head and he will not do it the way that you would prescribe. And you may have reasons within your business like, this is the way I install this because if I don't, I've seen these problems. But then if you got a hard-headed guy who knows everything and says, I'm not going to do it that way, I've never done that way. I mean, I think,
That's a huge issue with bringing
yeah, it's
somebody
harder to
in that
deal with.
has that experience level.
It's
And,
and
and they'll criticize you for telling them like, they'll say, you're not open to new ideas because you don't want to do it their way,
Yeah.
right? Like, forget the fact that they're not open to ideas either, because
Yeah.
they want to do it their way and you want to do it your way. So yeah, that's
But
yeah,
you risk that. If you're hiring experience, you risk hiring someone that thinks their way is the only way. They just may not be as open to your leadership. Whereas it costs more. It costs more time, it costs more money, it takes more work to take someone who knows nothing and to train them up and to prepare them. But if I have someone that to answer your question, if I have someone that knows nothing but is completely teachable and eager, like they see this as such a great opportunity and they just always want to learn and they're asking questions and they're trying hard. I want that person. I would rather work with that person and teach that person. And not only that, if I can get that person in and give that person peace of mind within my business, they can become those superstars and they'll have that deep loyalty because they know that from the beginning I took my time to be with them and to train them. And so
I
that
f-
I think that's kind of the approach I came to take later was that and that's really how I did it. I had a good training system on how I wanted to teach them what they needed to know. And then rather than going and getting and I did try to get other guys to come, but that's a hard thing too, because sometimes you may end up having to promise more than you want to deliver in compensation, where if you take your time and train someone, I mean,
yeah,
like
you
on the
said it
apprenticeship.
right. As far as opportunity goes, if you hire a guy that already has that experience level, so you're paying him more than you've ever paid anyone, he's much closer to your ceiling of what you
Yeah,
can afford to raise somebody up until
yeah,
you decide, until you're able to grow that business more. But a guy starting at the very bottom, you can do these incremental raises
yeah,
as he develops. So there's way more opportunities starting at the bottom for someone that you bring in with no experience. So
yeah, exactly.
in regards to opportunity alone, that as far as opportunity, you know, carrot dangling,
Uh-huh.
motivating that person to continue to be loyal to you and to work really hard and strive to get better. Yeah, you bring in a brand new person that knows nothing, and it's just one carrot after the other right close to their face so they can catch it, eat it, and then move
Yeah,
on to the next one.
yeah, yeah, and that's a rewarding experience for that employee. Um, I think another important piece of this is going back to your exit strategy. Like, eventually, I'm going to leave this business. I'm going to retire. I'm going to
Yeah.
sell. And I have found if you're going to sell a business, it's generally easier to groom someone, bring them up through the ranks, and prepare them to inherit than to
Yeah.
like try and find someone random out there that's willing to just buy you out.
Buy you out and then
And
learn all of your processes and,
yeah.
learn how to
And
manage that.
you mentioned like I've bought business, I've sold. When I sold my business, I had it with my training systems, I had resources, I had so many pieces in place and the customer service was stellar. And when I sold that, I didn't sell it well, so first I offered it to one of my guys within the business because I felt like he could do this. But he personally didn't feel ready to run a business. And so I was
Mm.
like, "Well, it's now or never if you I'll work with you on this, but it's now or never if you wanna do this or not." He decided not. So then I turned and I sold it publicly. I sold it to another business, and when they took it over, they threw out my systems, they raised all the prices, and they messed over our customers, and they had a major turnover in customers. It was like,
I
"Man, you
bet they
just
did.
destroyed this thing." So yeah, it's gonna be easier long term if I'm just going back to exit strategy. If you can treat your employees right and bring them up with that peace of mind. But at the same time, you always have to be prepared for the fact that they might leave you. I mean, even the most loyal and the best guy you ever had. And you can so for me, I told you I'd sit down with them individually and have a one-on-one interview every month. But in addition to that, I took my guys out to breakfast every week. And I would sit there, and that was when I did my training because we'd sit down to breakfast, I'd buy them breakfast, and then I would train them and I'd talk about here's some of the problems we've run into recently. Here's some things you need to know about. it was a great time every week to touch base and to train. But I felt like at the time I was doing the very best. I created a good company culture. I was trying to compensate them, and some my very best guys still left. And that's where you have to have built into it a training system that can
It's
bring
hard not to
someone
take that
in.
personal.
Yeah, it is. It is, especially with employees. It's hard not to go on a personal level with that.
Yeah, it's real hard not to take that personal. So, and I guess that's one of now it sounds like if someone's just dropping into this, then like this video that we're making right now, I mean, it sounds like we're almost saying like stay away from the experienced people. That's not it at all.
No.
It's just different. It depends on what you're looking for in your business.
Yeah.
But one of the, I mean, it's almost like the advantages of hiring an experienced person is self-evident, right? Like everybody knows if you have somebody that you can just send out without training them, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess we're just focusing on the benefits of taking a brand new person,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there
showing
are
them the
some.
way.
Yeah, I appreciate you point that out because the right thing for your business might be to find someone who has experience and to offer them some good compensation.
So
And
they
I
can
don't
help
want to say
you.
to be the poacher, but to be the guy that offers, let's put it this way, you have offered this employee a better opportunity. And if you can
Yeah,
do that, and it's to your advantage to do that, then yeah, buy some experience. And
sure.
that
Start
can
hanging out
really,
at gas stations and
yeah.
just get ready to recruit.
Yeah. But, there's different ethical ways to approach that, and
Yeah.
generally, if you're asking to get someone else's guy, it's crossing some ethical borders perhaps, but again,
I guess it
ultimately
depends on how you go about it.
yeah, it depends on how you go about it, and if you look at it like I said, like, if I'm not trying to hurt anyone else's business, I'm trying to provide this in person with a better opportunity to work with me, and I'm gonna present them with the best opportunity I can, then that's okay, you're not like. And you know what? I did actually can recruit a guy from another plumber at one point, and I felt so bad about what that did to that plumber that I called and maybe not everyone's gonna do this, but I called him up and I was like, "Hey, you know what? Uh, I've offered him a job, and I just want you to know that I appreciate." And I don't know, it was kind of a weird conversation, but he understood. He was like, "Yeah, you know what? The truth is he wasn't really fitting in with what was happening here, so it's okay. We're cool." And then I could still say hi to that company owner and the as plumbing supplier. For me, it's important to maintain positive relationships with everyone around me. Maybe other contractors are not as concerned about that, but I still could
Oh,
say
I
hi to him
totally agree.
and the plumbing supplier, and we didn't have to I didn't have to feel like he's hating me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, people
So
like to say stuff like, "Oh, it's just business," but I can't think of a single thing more personal than messing with somebody's money,
yeah,
to be honest. So, I
yeah,
mean, when people say it's just business, I think, remind me not to do business with that person.
yeah. Yeah, and maybe that brings us to at the beginning of the video, I was like, "Hey, stay tuned to the end. We got some important things to hit."
Oh, here it
And
comes.
and here it is. It's where you come to that personal level, the emotion level, the interpersonal relationships. And I have a question for you, Michael.
Uh-oh.
Here it is. Is it better to be friends with your employees or not?
No,
Oh, you say
no,
no?
I said, well, hold on. I think it's good to be friendly, um, and I think it's good for you to get to know them. I believe that your employees should be, like your um, friendliest acquaintances that you have. So I mean, in a way, to be honest with you, I'm really busy and I have a big family. So I don't really even have like a big friend circle. So to me, a really friendly acquaintance is a friend. That's the closest thing I have to a really good friend is an acquaintance that I know really well, and I we laugh and we joke. So I guess it depends on how you define a friend.
Yeah.
So I would say that yeah, I am friends with my employees to like I know their families' names, I know what's going on in their lives. I know them very well. They
Yeah.
know that they can come to me as a person that is trustworthy with information that they may not want to share with the world,
Yeah.
but they need to share it with someone. So I guess it depends
Yeah.
on how you define a friend.
Yeah, no, I think your perspective is spot on. I've brought that question up in continuing education training. I've trained a lot of not just plumbing contractors, but all kinds of contractors, and I do some business classes as we talk about how to run your contractor business. And I ask that question, should you be friends? And I get both answers. I get some that are like, yeah, these guys are my best friends, and I get some that are like, no way, never be friends. And I think you hit it right on. Like, you want to be friendly. You don't want to be a tyrant. No one wants to work for a tyrant, a slave
No,
driver, a cruel,
definitely not.
unkind person. No
Do
one
they
does.
make are those guys around anymore? Like, when I was coming up, my first, real honest to goodness trade job was, working for this framer, and, he was a subcontractor for a GC. I won't say his name. I'll call him T. His name started with T as well, Tom, but, he was now, I mean, I had my reasons for taking that job, like, he didn't drug test, if you know what I mean, and I was young. So, it was just, I it was what it was, and it was like the this big house he was building was right close to my house, so I didn't have I could wake up as late I just roll out of bed and, like, drive 1 mile. Um, but he was awful. He was
Oh,
awful. He was
yeah.
like, he would I mean, I'm telling you, if the hammering stopped, like, if he heard the hammering stop because I was just, like, wiping sweat from my eye, I would hear from across the lot, "Work! Get back to work!" Just crazy, and,
Yeah.
no safety gear, like, this big house we were doing was 11 on 12, and
Oh,
he
wow.
had me carrying sheets of, half-inch OSB with no safety gear,
Wow.
and it was on the coast, so it was 2 stories up
Oh.
and windy all the time,
Oh, man.
and the ground was just mud it's just some pilings because it's wet, right? It was right on the water. And
Yeah.
so we're going up there with, like, mud packed into all the treads in our boots, just slipping and sliding. I mean,
Oh, man.
it was an insane experience, and this guy was just like he was the worst I've ever seen in my life. I don't
Yeah.
even do they even are there guys like that out there
Well,
still?
I think today with this millennial generation and who's coming after, like, man, we have to pamper and be so overly good to them. I in one of these, classes I was doing, there was a sheetrock contractor, and his perspective on it was, "If I don't have a donut and a coffee to hand to my guys when they show up in the morning 20 minutes late to congratulate them for being there, they will quit." Like, and he
Oh,
said that, he's like, he's older now, he's retiring age, and he's like, "When I was a kid, when I started these trades, man, they were so brutal, they were hard, they yelled at me." And
oh,
I think
exactly.
generationally,
Mm.
like, the past generation could be harder on people as far as, like, the way that they talk to them, and work still happened, but if you go yelling at employees in this generation, no one's gonna stay, no one's gonna stick around.
Yeah, I
So
know, right?
so going back, like, you have to be friendly.
So much for the good old days, I guess. Mm.
Well, honestly, I think that's good that it's turned. I prefer a
Oh, same.
friendly,
Oh, no,
positive environment,
oh, are
but
you kidding me? Yeah, I mean, you could, like, turn and say hello to your coworker, and then next thing you hear is, "Stop talking and work." I mean, it was
oh,
just
yeah.
crazy with this guy.
Yeah, and so I think generationally, we're putting some of that away, but you wanna be friendly, but the problem is if you cross the line and become too much of friend. So, maybe we define that as if you're going out after work and you're spending time together, if you're going on trips together all the time, if you're like all of your time outside of work is together, I'm not saying don't do it or you can't do it, but you you can run into some some bigger challenges. And here's why. An employer and employee relationship, in the middle of it is money. And no matter how good of friends you are, no matter how much you love each other, and here's my experience. I hired one of my friends, and
Mm.
it was one where I had invited him to come work with me when I first started my business. I hired him. We got rolling. He worked for me for a couple years, and our friendship fell apart because he saw me as incompetent in running the business. I wasn't doing things the way I should, and there were mistakes I was making,
Mhm.
but, ultimately, he ended up leaving on bad terms because of these hard feelings that built up, and that I was like, how did I lose my friendship with this person? How can that have happened?" And as I examined it, it was because in between us was money. And when you bring a friend, you like, if you wanna keep your friend, be super careful about offering them a job, because when you put money in a relationship, it changes the relationship. It's a
Yeah.
dynamic that can work, but it can also be very divisive. And
Mm.
for me,
Yeah.
going forward, I was like, "I'm gonna be as good to my employees as I can." And like you said, you get to know them, you know their families, you start to feel like, almost a parental love for them because you're providing a job and you wanna make sure that they're okay and their family's okay. And yet, in the end, like, you can't be on the same terms as you were if you were buddies in high school because
Yes.
there's money in between.
The foundation
And
of the relationship has got to stay about money.
yeah. Yeah, and so I would hire people and I'd be super friendly and treat them as well as I could as an employer, but in the end, I knew ultimately the only reason that they come to me every week, every day is because I give them money. And if I ever stop doing that, our relationship's basically over. Maybe we can
Yeah.
still be friendly, an acquaintance, but our relationship immediately ends if I stop handing money to that person. And that sometimes is a lonely piece of the experience for an employer to look around and realize that all of these people are only here because I give them money. And that's really like kind of maybe a cynical way to look at it, but it's also
Well,
real.
if you're in it to make friends, then, that's a sad way to look at it. So hopefully you're not in it to make friends.
Yeah. And so I think that's why I really like the way you said it is because you can be friendly, you can have that acquaintance, but I'd be really cautious about how far you get into like, spending time outside of that. Now, that brings us to maybe the last one here is, should you hire family? Family in business? Because I just said, like, you have a relationship, and your family relationships, in my opinion, should be your most valued, treasured, important relationships in your life. And those are relationships that you want to maintain. And if you put money in between, that's why so many marriages struggle if they're in business together. Now, I have seen couples where they're both involved in the business and it seems to amplify their experience and their relationship. But I think that's because they run a good ship and they know how to succeed together. But you just have to know, like, you have to be careful um, when when you start involving family. I'm curious your opinion on that one, Michael. Family and business.
Mm. So this is, teeming with variables,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like, it depends on you. It depends on which family members we're talking about. It depends on your family. It depends on what kind of business you wanna run. I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily which trade would be better to hire family. When I say what type of business you wanna run, like, how far do you want this to go? Um, how much can you really trust them?
yeah,
So the issue that you run into, it's the same as becoming really close friends with an employee, it's a different kind of rapport. I see, in sales, people make this mistake. I say sales, I don't necessarily mean if you're a salesperson, but, if you're in business for yourself, you sell.
yeah,
So, in sales, a lot of people think and it comes from there's all these, like, I think idioms is the right word, where it's like sayings that have been around forever, like, people do business with people they like. So that gets misinterpreted as people do business with people they think are their friends,
oh yeah,
and that's really not the case. People do business with people that they like and respect,
yeah,
and that they think will do a good job. So, people in sales, they'll spend all this time and energy trying to make the customer think that, they're friends with the customer,
hmm
and that's really not you're not. You're there. get their money. You may like them. You may have convinced yourself that you're their friend, but what happens when they say no to your price and you're genuinely their friend? Now it's weird,
Yeah.
right? Now you either have to take a no for an answer and give them some kind of discount that you weren't prepared to give them, or maybe walk away from the job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's uncomfortable, right? Because they think you're their friend, so you won't mind if they say no. Right, so
Yeah.
that's not the proper rapport, that's not the proper relationship when you're dealing with a customer. It's also not the proper relationship when you're dealing with an employee.
Mm.
If they think that you guys are really close friends, then there's gonna be a temptation, which is your fault. They're gonna be tempted to take advantage of you.
Exactly.
They're gonna be tempted to, do bad work or show
Yep.
up late or
Yep.
leave early or take long lunches
Yep.
and not get in trouble.
And I think you hit it right on because that's where family relationships fall into, like
Mm,
and I've had those issues with working with family members where it's like their performance isn't what I would expect from a normal employee, but it's like, "What are you gonna do? Fire me? I'm your family." And it's like, that's not
exactly.
fair. That's
I'll
not
see you at Thanksgiving, you know?
right.
Yeah, it's
It's
like,
not a
ugh.
fair relationship on either end, and so I guess what I'm saying is I'm not insisting don't hire because that's not the right approach either. Don't ever hire your family. I don't think that's I hired my
No, yeah.
brother and he worked with me for a bunch of years doing plumbing and he's one of my best friends and we were able to maintain a positive relationship during that experience and when he decided to go out on his own and like, he runs now a plumbing and contractor business of his own, and we often talk and coach each other and help each other. So, it doesn't have to destroy your relationships,
It
but
doesn't. I feel
just
like only the strongest of family relationships can survive it, though.
yeah, but you have to be aware that it can. It can make things difficult and awkward, especially if on the employee end, they feel like you weren't treating them fair or paying them enough. That can cause really harmful things, and then that comes out in every family gathering you have, and it's just like
Oh, it
you have to
does,
be
right?
careful.
And,
Yeah,
like,
you have
what
to be
and they're
careful.
they're saying stuff about you to other family
Yeah,
members when you're not around and all this crazy stuff that goes on in families.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna hire family or a friend, then it's gonna be on you to be crystal clear
yeah,
about what all the expectations are. It can't just be like, "Oh, yeah, your family, I'll help you out." Or, "Oh, hey, your family, can you help me out?" I mean,
yeah,
it can't be that kinda handshake deal. It's got to be a whole conversation,
yeah,
probably in writing, with what is expected
yeah,
on both
right,
sides.
yeah. Yeah, and that's probably the best way to protect yourself, and I think one of the hardest things would be cutting off that employee relationship in a bad way, like firing a family member can
Yep.
just cause damage for life, and those, again, are your most valuable relationships in your life, and to me, I think it's important to carefully consider that and be open with those people. And you might even have that open conversation, just be like, "You know what? You're my family and I love you, and I do not want our relationship to end or be hurt because we're working together. So if there's ever issues, please just be open with me and talk with me because I want to work it out and I don't want to damage our relationship." And if
Uh,
you take that kind of
yes.
approach, I think that's the best way to navigate that. But again, tread lightly because it's risky area.
And
With
but
family and friends.
I think done well, there's probably no stronger, more solid business than a family-owned and operated business. If
Yeah,
so if you do it right, there's no one you'll trust family more than anything.
yeah,
They have as much to lose as you do.
mhm,
I mean, they'll go the extra mile. They'll show up early, they'll work late, like they'll sacrifice parts of themselves to make sure that the business does well, and they'll take it very, very personally to make sure that the
yeah,
business does well. So if done correctly, and if you have the right family members in place, I guess, then there's probably no better business than
yeah,
a business that's a bunch of family members working towards a common goal.
yeah,
It's just it,
yeah, I
you
think
got,
that's another, good point. I think we get, some of this corporate ideology comes down of how nepotism or family relationships in larger corporate like business is bad, bad, even bad, you know. Oh, you hired your family. Oh, you know. But I don't think that's the case. I think you're right that especially on a small business and a contractor level, like I'm
Oh,
not at
yeah.
all saying don't hire your family because going back to like when I was an apprentice and I was coming through the ranks and I saw two brothers had a business and all their sons were in it. Do I resent that? Actually, no.
No,
I
that's
respect that.
awesome.
Yeah, that, and I think they had their family issues with business, and they had, but they still
Sure.
loved each other, and it was obvious, and they were successful, you know. So I'm not at all saying don't go into it. I do think that you know we don't need to worry as much as the corporate level about that. Like, yeah, hire your family if it's the best thing for the business. Sure, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, if you're trying to spend time with your family, I mean, hey, we're out there, we're trying to make it, we have to spend time away from our families, but the people that figure out how to work with their family and they're able to
Yeah.
that, like, that regret on your deathbed, "Oh, I should have worked less and spent more time with family." I
Yeah.
mean, if you can work with if you can, like, eliminate that, right, because 'cause you're working with your family, I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I think that is
And
awesome.
I'll maybe just in summary, I'll say that's where I'm at with my family right now. I have a son who's in high school, and I have gotten him an apprentice license, so he's a licensed plumber, and he comes with me and he works with me. He has a lot of other career ideas. He may not end up being a plumber, and I'm totally fine with that. But to me, the time that I spend with him on the job, first of all, I know I'm training him on some skills that he could use in his life. It'll be useful information
His whole
and good
life.
skills. Like if he ever needs to do plumbing in his own house, even if he's not a plumber, he'll be fine. But to me personally, it's the time that I spend with my boys. I have another one who's 10 and he comes and helps clean the job site.
Nice.
Like that's priceless time. Like,
It
because
is.
yeah, I am busy and
It
I have
is.
to provide for my family and making money. But if we can do it together and have fun, yeah, I wouldn't say never do family because
Yeah.
to me
I mean, they
it's
might not see it
rewarding.
that way, but you do.
Well, actually they do because I try to be fun and I pay them for helping me and they actually love coming with dad. So,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it's good if you can have that relationship and spend that time together in a family situation in a business. But, I think we've pretty well discussed both sides of it that you can have a great experience or you can have a really bad experience, and it's gonna be important to watch it carefully, so
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for all your
yeah.
time today. I know you gotta go. So really, really grateful for all the wisdom that you bring and share. It's very generous of you to
Yeah,
be
you're
so
welcome.
forthcoming. So hopefully we'll do another one, huh? If you're willing.
I have ideas, yeah, yeah, I'm sure there's
Awesome,
more that I
awesome.
can share, so
I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure everybody watching or listening is looking forward to it as well. If you are watching or listening, then please like, subscribe, share, do all the things. It helps the channel out tremendously. If you have questions or topics that you want covered, leave us a comment. Tell us about it. So really appreciate everyone's attendance. If you're watching this, thank you so much. And Tom, once again, thank you so much. And
yeah, you're
we'll
welcome.
see you next time.
Okay, we'll see ya, thanks.